Okay, we're live here on YouTube again, and I just wanted to share a book review with you. This is Danielle Krysa's Your Inner Critic is a Big Jerk, and you may know her as the Jealous Curator. She has a blog, a website, and Facebook page, and has spent many years sharing inspiration from other wonderful artists that she's encountered on the internet. And I love this book. I'm excited about it because it really addresses so many of the topics that I cover in when I'm sharing my weekly pep talks, watercolor encouragement for you. They're encouragement for every artist because I know that deep inside of us we have a big jerk who's telling us we can't do something, telling us we're not good enough. And when we have to listen to that voice all day long, it's really hard to silence that voice in your head that says you can't do anything right, and you shouldn't even be calling yourself an artist, and that painting was a mess, or that painting was great and you're never going to do anything that good again. We have all these voices in our heads saying, you can't do it. And so we need to surround ourselves with inspiration, with voices that tell us the truth about why we're making art, about whether or not we have any right to make art. And the answer to that is yes, you do. And so this little book is one of those voices. This is a book that tells you, that helps you keep the right frame of mind about art, because I don't think most of us, let me know if you disagree with this, but I don't think most of us woke up one day and said, I'm going to make art because I just know I have it in me to be the next Vincent van Gogh. I'm going to be the next Picasso. I'm sure that I can do just as good as that Michelangelo dude. We don't think that. We start out making art because there's something in us that says we want to make art. And then at some point we start, and often it doesn't take very long, we start listening to a voice that says, you're never going to be good enough. And so I read the book. It's not a very big book. Let's see here. 130 pages. So it's not really long, just a little guy. It's illustrated with these really fun little illustrations. You should never paint again. That's you have to read the rest of the chapter to see why it says that. And then there's just, let's see here, lots of fun little illustrations through the book. These are made by Martha Rich, these paintings. And then really each chapter just addresses a different aspect of the voice that inner critic might be speaking to you. Chapter 1, I think, is one of my favorites. Everyone is creative. And I hear it all the time. I can't tell you how many people admire what I do as an artist and say, oh, I'm not creative at all. And that's that inner critic. That's that voice in your head that says you're not creative. And maybe they're saying that because all they can draw is a stick man, or they can't even draw a stick man. But the truth is, every single one of us has a desire to create, to make something. And that and it manifests in different ways. And then the saddest of all is when it doesn't manifest at all, is when you have let that inner voice silence you, silence that drive to create. And so, and I'm always sad when people find out I'm an artist and then they say wistfully, oh, I wish I could do that. And you can just hear that they've given up on ever being able to make something good. And the fact is, the Pablo Picasso quote, which Danielle quotes in here, every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once we grow up. So she addresses that. She addresses the excuses that we make that keep us from creating art. And often we hide our inner critic under all these excuses. So that's why we move right on to chapter 2, which is excuses are the enemy. And they are. We hide all our insecurities under all those excuses, and they can really keep us from getting anything done. Whether or not you should go to art school. A lot of people talk about being self-taught kind of shamefully, like, oh, I'm just a self-taught artist. like they have less credentials. I love her quote here. Here's a question. How can teaching yourself something new be a bad thing? It shows gumption, drive, and a desire to learn, which is very admirable. And then she goes on to say, it's important to remember that every great in every field started out knowing absolutely nothing. And I think sometimes our lack of creativity, or our inner critic, is rooted in unrealistic expectations. We think that we should get a perfect result when we really are just at that toddler stage of learning something. And so when we have realistic expectations that everybody starts out knowing nothing, and we need to give ourselves the freedom to be a know-nothing at that stage, and just work at getting better, to recognize that it's just practice. When we recognize that, we can kind of own that beginnerness that we have. Finally, I just want to quote a few more, and she's chapter 8, Failure Leads to Genius. And I love this chapter. Okay, this is my favorite chapter because it's about redefining our idea of success and redefining our thoughts about failure, which I think is actually even more important. Thomas Edison created 10,000 prototypes of light bulbs, of the light bulb, before he got it right. And he hadn't failed, he just found 10,000 ways that didn't work. And that's a quote from Thomas Edison, and I love that. When something doesn't turn out, we can say, guess what? I found something that doesn't work. I'm that much closer to finding something that does. And when we think about it that way, our success is going to be all the sweeter, and we'll be much less likely to give up. Truman Capote, failure is the condiment that gives success its flavor. Would success be as sweet if we didn't know that bitter taste of it not working out and failure not working? Brené Brown says there is no innovation and creativity without failure, period. If you're not willing to fail, are you going to be willing to risk something, to make a mistake? And so when you have these redefinitions of failure as not something to flee, something to avoid, and something to just avoid at all costs, when we look at failure as an opportunity for us to learn something, it's a lot more freeing to know that, you know what, the painting didn't turn out, I'm just that much closer to getting it right. So I really would encourage you, if you struggle with feeling discouraged, having that creative muse desert you because you've put so much pressure on it to succeed, go ahead and pick up this little book. You can get it in Kindle or hardcover. Personally, I like books I can hold in my hand and underline things. So I do have links in the description of this video. Thank you, Danielle. If you ever get to see this, I want to just thank you for being that outer voice that we sometimes need to convince our inner voice what to believe. I've spent so many years thinking about success and failure and creativity and encouragement for my own inner critic, ways to silence that inner voice, and to have someone else stand up beside you and say, you're on the right track. You can silence those voices of doubt by replacing them with these positive thoughts, these positive angles. That's a really it feels really good. You know you're not alone. You have somebody else who's on your side, who understands what it's like. And so we can conquer those feelings of doubt and insecurity together. I want to just thank you guys for sticking around. I appreciate not only for you being here for my live video lesson. I do them every Tuesday at noon Pacific time. And I send out an email every week just to remind everybody where to find that video. So if you're not on my mailing list, head over to angelafair.com and you can sign up. Make sure you get notices about the live lessons. All the other helpful links you could think of are down below in the description for this video.